Hey, welcome guys to Talking Element. As you can see, I am not Michael. My name's Christie Morangi. If you haven't seen me or met me, I am the Minister to Children and Families here. So this week we have Robert and Jessica Spencer with us. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming to talk to us. Could you guys give me a little intro of yourselves?
I started serving at Element ever since I was a little kid. I would always do it with my mom. And I kind of grew up in Element since the beginning. I was one of the first children's classes. I usually serve all over the place when it comes to the children's. So anywhere from junior high, high school, and down to the preschools.
I started helping out at Element when Robert and I first started dating. I love working with the preschoolers. They are so much fun. But I help out wherever you guys need us. It's been a lot of fun.
You guys also serve outside of Element when you were going to college. Tell us a little bit about that, where you were serving.
Oh, yeah. With Crew at Hancock, we did an apologetics series on Friday nights. And on campus, we did an activity called clipboarding, where we would take a survey from random parts of the student body and ask them if they knew God, and we would follow up by telling them about the club and inviting them to Friday nights. Before the pandemic, we were doing a big dinner at one of our leaders' houses, and then the lesson afterwards, and doing games, and it was a lot of fun.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So as you guys know, we are doing a series through the Songs of Ascent. These are songs that pilgrims would sing or recite on the way to Jerusalem to worship God at the temple during the feast time that included Passover. This week in the message, we're talking about Psalm 123, verses 1 through 4. It says, "I look to you, heaven-dwelling God, look up to you for help. Like servants alert to their master's commands, like a maiden attending her lady, we're watching and waiting, holding our breath, awaiting your word of mercy. Mercy, God, mercy. We've been kicked around long enough, kicked in the teeth by complacent rich men, complacent rich men, kicked when we're down by arrogant brutes." So the message that we have this week pretty much goes all over the place, right? About, we start out with justice, talking about justice, and then how our eyes should be open to the people that are downtrodden, looking for those people that are really kind of kicked in the teeth by life, and how we can model Jesus to them by serving. One of the reasons that I get the chance to interview you guys is that you guys are a member of my gospel community. And so when we were talking about having a Talking Element with the focus being serving, you guys were the first ones that came to mind for me, not only because you're in gospel community with me, but because you serve every single week within Element. And then also you serve our gospel community as well. Tell us a little bit about our gospel community, and be nice. And how did you get involved? What made you want to to join a gospel community?
Kind of originally it was, I always heard about gospel communities, and I actually didn't get involved with one until Thomas Carpenter actually brought me into one. He's like, "You should really come to a GC sometime." And I'm like, I don't know, because I'm usually a very shy person when it comes to introductions. I hate introductions. I don't want to get involved, but I'm really glad that I did, because it really ended up being a big family focus at our GC, and everybody's very close, and people actually care and listen, and people are always there for you, and you get closer to certain members of the GC more so than others, but you still are part of that living life together, and I've really enjoyed it.
I got into the GC once again when I started dating Robert. He dragged me to one of them because I was like, I don't know. And it ended up being really nice because everyone just completely welcomed me and brought me in, and they wanted to get to know me, which was really nice. And we have a range of walks of where people are at in their life. And so we get, being on the younger side of the group, we get a lot of wisdom and a lot of advice from this group, and it's really nice when we're going through something that we have that support system.
How have you personally been served through your gospel community?
Kind of just back to the support thing, like a couple months ago even, we went through a really rough time with my little brother. He's been struggling with some mental health concerns, and it was kind of hard to deal with because he's never had these mental health issues before. I didn't know what to really turn to, and I would pray to God, and it just had a lot of questions. But certain members, and you guys included, were very close and very supportive and gave us a lot of wisdom through that time and a lot of support. Even if that's just playing a board game to kind of have fun and get distracted from it, or actually sitting down and talking about it.
Friendship. The friendship, like Robert's saying, playing board games and just hanging out together. We, instead of just meeting on Wednesday nights, we tend to do other stuff besides just Wednesday nights, and that's always fun.
How has it inspired you to, look outside in the people you meet and things like that and serving them?
One of the topics that normally come up with our GC is what we do in our normal lives to kind of outreach people, and we have a lot of discussions about that, and I think that kind of helps us want to talk about it more with other people. And we not only talk about how we could do it, but what's the struggles in that. And I think that's something really important, because you're like, yeah, I should be able to do that, and then you get into it and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. Having that support and us actually talking about it and talking about the struggles has helped kind of develop it further.
Okay.
I kind of think about church as to being, if you're not involved in the community, then it's just kind of capital R religion rather than a relationship. It's very important to get involved, or like if you ever feel like at church, I've experienced this too, is where you feel like you're not connected to it, or like God is some distance place and you feel like you might not be getting something from church, because it's one of the things that you can often do that can kind of help with that is get involved. Get around the church, and if you don't feel like you're getting anything from it, like the things that I get from kind of serving and teaching the kids, like diving into the Word a little bit deeper, and maybe some of the questions that the kids ask, you're like, oh, I've never thought of it that way, I'll get back to you, or trying to answer some of the questions that they have, and it just really helps kind of refine your walk at the same time as like teaching. And the amount of things that I've learned sometimes feels like it's more than I'm even teaching the kids in that lesson or something. Yeah.
I've heard that from more than one person.
Yeah.
When I started going here to Element, that idea was modeled a lot, especially in our gospel community, where they're very involved in the church, and we do a lot. Christie and Jenna are both the leaders in the children's ministry and part of staff, and so I've definitely seen it modeled, and I've felt more connected to God at this church than I have at a lot of other places.
In what ways do you see opportunities to serve individual members? Because I know, these are obviously questions that I'm asking for a reason, because I have seen you serve, both of you, serve individual members within the gospel community. What ways have you done that?
Most recently, I've been trying to give some of the parents a date night when I have off of work. I'm like, hey, Jenna, I'm off. Do you want to take Phil out and go to dinner? And this past week, I did that for the Warrens, and the parents really I could tell that they needed that break, and they seemed to really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. In this message, we're talking about the downtrodden and how we need to be looking for people that have been kind of kicked in the teeth, and there's no one that is kicked in the teeth more than parents of young children. So that is a huge serving opportunity. Are there people within, and you don't name names, within our gospel community that maybe if you hadn't been in a community together, you wouldn't have connected with at all, perhaps, or through serving these people that maybe you wouldn't have connected with at all, kind of changes your point of view with them?
I'm going to be completely honest, probably 90% of our GC and most of crew. We have such a wide range of people in crew that come from all sorts of majors and all sorts of backgrounds that I probably would have never met. Mm-hmm. And then God, the believing in God, brings that all together.
Mm.
I think GC is a really good place, like, to be able to go for me, but I like the meaningful relationships that came from being in the gospel community.
Mm-hmm. You're expecting your first child. Do you want to say what you're having, or are we keeping that a secret?
We're having a girl.
Yay! One of the things within gospel community that we try to do is to include the children that are a part of our community. How do you plan on introducing your baby to the concept of community and how important it is? Or have you even thought that far? Yeah.
Kind of through example. Seeing the kids, I'm sure that they see our GC and how we actually interact with one another, because that's how I saw it when I was a kid.
Well, being part of our GC and doing Sunday mornings has helped me become closer to God, and that's the putting in the work. You're pouring yourself into a community and into God, and you have that close relationship with Him. Mm-hmm. Although circumstances might change, I don't want to back out of it too much, because if I'm not as connected as we are, that I might start to not pull away from Him, but feel less close to Him.
Well, thanks, guys. This was a great talk, and thanks for being part of our community. So when you're walking around Element, make sure if you're going by the children's room, stick your head in and say hi to Robert or Jessica. They're probably going to be in there. And then we'll come back to you next week with another story. Thanks for watching.
In order to wrap this up, and going back to the idea that we are all made in the image of God, and that we are all wrong, and there's nothing that really divides us, I wanted to read a story from the Jesus Storybook Bible. And my wife was actually reading this story to our son this morning, and as I lay there half asleep, half paying attention, I thought this would be a really cool way to end this episode today from a kid's storybook Bible. Now, what I'd like you to do is place yourself into the story. What I mean by that is, don't think you're Jesus, but think of yourselves as one of the servants. Before this meal, and the servants aren't there washing feet, what is it that you would be thinking? How do you view the servants who will wash your feet? What do you think of Judas and what is happening, even as you aren't even aware of it? But what would you think of Judas? And then what do you think of Jesus? All that he did, his acts and his words of what is to come. And spend time responding to the fact that there's Jesus and then there's all of us. And it doesn't matter our skin color, it doesn't matter what we have done, it doesn't matter if we're Judas or not, but we are all made in the image of God, and because of Christ's work, we are redeemed. This story I'm going to read is called A Servant King. It was Passover, the time when God's people remembered how God had rescued them from being slaves in Egypt. Every year they killed a lamb and ate it. The lamb died instead of us, they would say. But this Passover, God was getting ready for an even greater rescue. Jesus and his friends were having a Passover meal together in the upstairs room. But Jesus' friends were arguing. What about? They were arguing about stinky feet. Stinky feet? Yes, that's right, stinky feet. Now, the thing about feet back then is that people didn't wear shoes, they only wore sandals, which might not sound unusual, except that the streets in those days were dirty. And I don't just mean dusty dirty, I mean really stinky dirty. With all those cows and horses everywhere, can you imagine the stuff on the street that ended up on their feet? Anyways, someone had to wash away that dirt and grime, but it was a dreadful job. Who on earth would ever dream of volunteering to do it? Only the lowliest of servants. I'm not the servant, Peter said. Nor am I, said Matthew. Quietly, Jesus got up from the table, took off his robe, picked up a basin of water, knelt down, and started to wash his friend's feet. You can't, Peter said. He didn't understand about Jesus being the servant king. If you don't let me wash your dirty feet, Peter, Jesus said, you can't be close to me. Jesus knew that what people needed most was to be clean on the inside. All the dirt on their feet was nothing compared to the sin inside their hearts. Then wash me, Lord, Peter said, tears filling his eyes, all of me. One by one, Jesus washed everyone's feet. I'm doing this because I love you, Jesus explained. Do this for each other. Now, one of Jesus' friends had made a bad plan. No one else knew what the bad plan was, but Jesus knew, and so did Judas. Judas was going to help the leaders capture Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. Go on, Judas, Jesus said. And Judas got up from the meal, left the room, and walked out into the night. Then Jesus picked up some bread and broke it. He gave it to his friends. He picked up a cup of wine and thanked God for it. He poured it out and shared it. My body is like this bread I will break, Jesus told them. This cup of wine is like my blood I will pour out. But this is how God will rescue my whole world. My life will break and God's broken world will mend. My heart will tear apart and yours will heal. Just as the Passover lamb died, so now I will die instead of you. My blood will wash away all your sins and you'll be clean on the inside, in your hearts. So whenever you eat and drink, remember, Jesus said, I've rescued you. Jesus knew it was nearly time for him to leave the world and go back to God. I won't be with you long, he said. You are going to be very sad, but God's help will come, and then you'll be filled with a forever happiness that won't ever leave. So don't be afraid. You are my friends, and I love you. Then they sang a song and walked up to their favorite place, an Olive Garden. Not the Olive Garden, an Olive Garden. We'll see you next week.